This is the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd and Adam. If you're looking to generate wealth and passive income in the lucrative world of mobile home parks, you're in the right place. You'll discover solutions to the common legal and operational pitfalls and how to optimize parks to maximize income. Your host is in the trenches. He's a real estate attorney, financial analyst, and mobile home park investor and operator. Now, let's turn it over to Ferd and Adam.
Welcome back, Mobile Home Park Nation. Ferd and Adam here again today with another episode of the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast. Got a great guest here again today for you today. He's a mobile home park owner-operator, been in the business a few years, and he's going to tell us some of his stories, some trials, some tribulations, and some tips to help you, our audience. Please help me welcome my guest, Adam Sobieski. Adam, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, Ferd. Appreciate it, buddy.
You got it. Well, I know you a little bit. We've talked several times in the past, but for our audience that may not, please give us a little bit more of your background, how you got in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into real estate investing back in 2009 is when I started buying single family homes after the recession here in San Diego. And, basically came around to 2014, 15. And obviously it was hard to get yield in terms of any decent cash flow on buying anything in the San Diego, California market. I was looking at apartment buildings and yada, yada, and kind of spinning my wheels to find a decent cash flow return, and I wasn't really going to get it here. And so my friend Justin Donald, who I believe you know, and Nick Najar, they were in mobile home park investing, and I was like, trailer parks, like why would I do that, right? Like I think I'd been in a mobile home when I was a kid once, but it wasn't on my radar in terms of an asset class in real estate. And my friend Justin was just basically telling me, hey, you're going to get the best cap rate and the best cash flow yield, and it's at least worth your while to go to the boot camp, right? So I went to Frank and Dave's boot camp, did that, and obviously when you go to boot camp, it kind of opens your eyes to the industry, and I knew that it was something I wanted to do. So I started calling via Mojo Dialer. My buddy Nick Najar and I cold calling basically every park in the state of Illinois and Wisconsin, which is it's a lot of work. My background is in sales, and so I wasn't afraid to hit the phones, but I wasn't really getting where I wanted to go. And I'm trying to convince sellers to sell me their park, and I'm like, I get a little bit impatient. I'm like, you know what? All I want is that at this time, four years ago, I just want an 8, 9, or 10 cap. I want to try this out, get a 20% cash on cash. There's all these brokers with parks for sale already. Let me just try to get one of these and try it out, see if this is even for me, right? Running a trailer park, I don't even know if this is for me. So let me just buy one of these broker listings. And so I was looking at the listings. Sure enough, I then got introduced to Stothy, Steve Edel, who you've had on your podcast, who runs the Due Diligence Partners, because I was going through Frank and Dave's 500-page due diligence book, and I'm like, I need an expert here, right? This is definitely not something that I'm comfortable doing every step, and it's beyond a full-time job, as you know, right? So he was the best find that I ever had with Stothy. Shout out to Due Diligence Partners. So long story short, I tied up a park in Peoria, Illinois, in Chillicothe, went to this park. Thank God Stothy flew out there. This was before he had a team himself, looked at it. We were about halfway through our meeting with the park owner and manager, and he's like, hey, you know what? Let's go grab some food. We go out to lunch, and he's like, just drop this deal. Just, Park's a registered sex offender, just had another sex offense in February. Half the names on the rent rolls are still falsified at this point. He's got like 2 of his kids living in the park, haven't been there for 4 years. He's like, just drop this park. This is not the good deal. I don't know anything, right? So I'm like, oh, that's fine, but okay, we'll drop it. Sure enough, I'm in Peoria for 5 days. I make friends with the neighboring park owner, this guy named Mark. End up becoming buddy with him, invites me to his family dinner Sunday. He's like, hey, you know what? We have a family friend who owns this park in Rockford. Let's take a drive. You got nothing going. Let's take a drive together tomorrow. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll go look at a park. I've heard of Rockford, second biggest city in Illinois. Let's go take a look at that. So we drive there together, right? I just had met this guy a couple days earlier. We drive 3 hours together in my rental car to Rockford. We go meet with Terry, who owns this park in Rockford that ended up being 100% in the floodplain. And so I ended up not even making an offer on that park. but I sent her as a seller lead to Casey Tome, who's a broker at Sunstone. And I said, hey man, if you ever have anything in the Rockford area, I like the MSA, just let me know, right? And so sure enough, send him that seller lead to get a listing. 3 weeks later, he sends me this park in the Rockford MSA. It's in Belvedere technically, but in the Rockford MSA. It's little park, 30 lots. And he sends me that listing. I end up buying that in May of 2019. The lot rent was $330. When I bought that park here 2.5 years later, we're at $430. I bought the park for 400 grand, 30 lots, 100% tenant owned homes, city water, city sewer, no floodplain, really nice park. Some 70s and 80s homes, but then also a couple, some double wides and some vinyl side shingle roof, nicer 90s and 2000s homes. And I bought it for 400 grand, which if you just run the quick math on that, we're at $430 lot rent now. And we'll probably go up another $40 this year, 30 lots. And so we're, at an 8 cap, probably at about 1.4 million. And the cool story about this park is that the park manager's been managing that park for 15 years. She's a rock star. Her husband's the maintenance guy, which usually isn't a good setup, but they're just very high integrity people. And they do an incredible job. That park is as hands off of a 30 lot park that you'll ever have. We have occasional water leak and that's about it. And we have never missed a rent payment in 3 years. 20 of the 30 tenants are on auto pay, where it auto withdraws from their bank account on the 5th of every month. And we've never even served a 5-day notice ever. So not only have we never had an eviction, so, you hear a lot of horror stories about the trailer park business, and it is an operations business, but every once in a while, when you kiss a couple frogs, you get lucky. So the short story on that is that I had paid due diligence fees on the Peoria park and on another park in Peru, Indiana. So this was my third park that I was paying DD fees on. So if I didn't close on that park in Rockford, I might have just invested in a fund or done something else, because I was going to be over about 35 or 40 grand in due diligence fees if I didn't close on my park in Rockford without ever having bought a park. So, but I have, again, I wasn't coming into the business. Some people come into the business at different areas, right? Some people come in it and we're already worth a couple $1 million. Some people come in it and they have $10,000 to their name. So I think you have to know, kind of like in football, down and distance, you have to know, like, where are you at in your chapter of investing? What capital do you have? And kind of what's your investor DNA? What's your risk profile? I wanted to start with a small park, see if I liked it. And then I just closed 3 months ago on park number 2 in Springfield, Illinois, 52 pads, 41 occupied, city water, city sewer, no floodplain, really a nice park. And so really excited about that one. And I'll probably buy another 2 or 3 parks until I run out of my own money. And then I guess I'll have to really see if syndication is for me. I think there's different ways to go in this. And a lot of people talk about 1,000 lots, 5,000 lots, but you could just have a few really good parks. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And one thing that I did that's not traditional is that my first park that I bought in Rockford, is worth around at least 1.4 at this point that it would sell for, is it's owned free and clear. So there's no arm. I didn't like getting emails from my banker. It's against the principle of leverage, but that cash flow of 8 to 10,000 a month, kind of offsets most of my lifestyle expenses with the other real estate and things that I have going. And it was a very personal thing to say, hey, I'm going to buy this park. It's a perfect little park, city utilities, all resident owned homes, works like, clockwork. And we're just going to keep that thing forever. And, that's kind of the play on that one. Now the Springfield park is interesting, and I'm doing a lot of talking. So before I go into the Springfield park, I'll kick it over to you with some maybe some thoughts on that. I just figured I'd share my journey there.
No, great stuff. I know you've told me that before, and it's definitely inspiring. So it's great you can do it from remote too. You obviously picked a good park with the Rockford one. Good lessons learned already on that. Yeah, your approach of not having debt is definitely unique. And obviously not everybody can do it, and everybody can do it long term or on multiple deals, because we all have a finite amount of capital. But
yep.
There is definitely a risk reward profile. It's good that you identified what your investment criteria were. I'm curious on why Illinois and Wisconsin coming out of California. I get not in California because cap rates are so low. California being a blue high regulatory state, a lot of people don't like it. Illinois is
Yep.
generally a blue high regulatory state, so we probably had some natural awareness of that. And then I'd
Right.
also like to touch on the Mojo system as far as cold calling, because I know people,
Yeah.
a lot of people do use that, but a lot of people have no idea what it is. So maybe touch on that as well.
Yep.
And are you still doing it, or have you just gone to the broker route now that you bought the first one through Sunstone?
Really good question. So this is where it comes down to building relationships. So the seller that I bought the Rockford Park from, we became friends. So even though I got a really good deal and I actually kind of retraded that deal by like 20% at kind of at the finish line, because there were some density issues that we weren't aware of, and he was okay with it. We stayed friends, and he had been sending out mail and cold calling owners in Illinois for years. Well, he moved all his property to Texas, including his park portfolio. So the Springfield seller lead that I got didn't come from Mojo dialing. It wasn't from a broker. It came from one of his mailings that he just gave to me for free because we became friends, no assignment, didn't want any money. He's like, hey, don't want any money. We're friends. I would buy this park tomorrow if I didn't move all my assets to Texas. And he just kind of gave it to me on a platter. So it's interesting what happens, when I connect the dots, even looking at sending that seller lead to Casey Tome, and then Casey gives me his pocket listing in Rockford. That Rockford seller then gives me his direct to seller lead that he got in Springfield. Good things happen in this business when you create the right relationship. So no, I do not Mojo dial anymore for parks number 3 and 4 here. Going to be going the broker route, but also looking to kind of add on to the MSAs that I'm currently in, which is Springfield and Rockford. So why do I like those MSAs? Rockford's really big MSA, almost 400,000 people, second largest city in Illinois. I like the employment there. I like Northern Illinois, even though it's a blue state, the lot rents are high. So even at this park, we're at 430, but lot rents can go much higher versus Southern Illinois, obviously.
Right.
Springfield, I like that MSA, even though it's not quite as good as Northern Illinois. It's just, if you drive around Springfield, it's got giant medical buildings. It's medical and government, right? It's basically like the United States would have to fail for Springfield to fail, even though the lot rents are a little bit lower. So why did I start in Illinois and Wisconsin? I think like anybody else in this business, Ferd, maybe similar reason to you. You kind of start where you're comfortable with. Even though I live in San Diego, my wife's family and my whole family is actually from Illinois and Chicago. So our family's in Libertyville, Illinois, Waukegan, Illinois, Tinley Park, Illinois, and Brookfield, Wisconsin. So I'm like, hey, worst case, something happens, I don't know what I'm doing. At least I could probably send a family member out there to deal with something. And we're out there a few months a year anyways. So I can, meet with park manager, do things that I need to do physically when I'm there. So kind of comfort level. Going backward, I probably maybe would have stuck more to Wisconsin because Illinois is so blue, but no rent control yet. So still pretty comfortable in Illinois. And I don't think rent control will happen because, of the politicians. And, I think it's more of a, hey, we're trying to help you, but I don't think that legislation is coming, but who knows? So Mojo dialing doesn't happen anymore. My next play is to buy more parks near where I'm already at, because I have such great systems and staff at the Rockford Park that I would like to add on there. My park manager could manage a 400 lot community. She's an absolute rock star, and her husband, I call him MacGyver, can fix anything for cheap. So they're a huge part of that asset. So my goal is to get more lots under their control there. And then in Springfield, I've been looking at, the Springfield deal is more of a capital gains play. So on the Springfield Park, I do have debt on that park. So I did take out debt on that park. That's going to be a little bit more of a capital gain strategy. So the Rockford parks, I think, probably keep forever, cash flow them. Again, I'm not a syndicator. And then the Springfield Park, we bought the 52 space park. The park right next to it, though, is an 80 space park, also on city utilities, 100% occupied. That park about 20 years ago was all 130 pad park. So right now, 130 pad, anything 100 plus pads in Springfield as one park is selling for $55,000 to $70,000 a lot. So I bought for $20,000 a lot. I looked up the tax records. The guy that bought the 80, I was trying to buy it. The guy who bought the 80 pad park right next to me bought for 1.5 million. So he got it about for 20K a pad too. And I don't know if he knows what we're sitting on, that this thing, there's just a fence. It's two different parcels, but it could all be one park. My goal now is, now that we've contacted him, is to team up with him and say, hey, do you want to list this? And you'd have more knowledge on this than me, Ferd, is to say, hey, let's package this thing together and exit here for 60K a pad, right? I bought for $1 million. I'll sell for 3 million. He bought for 1.5. You know, we can sell 130 pad park, city utilities, pretty much all occupied in Springfield for, you know, $7 or $8 million, and probably wait another 300 days. So we only pay capital gains tax, and, you know, kind of take some chips off the table. So that's kind of the initial thought there. If he's not okay with it, then the goal is to buy another park in Springfield this year and another park in Rockford, and kind of build out where I already have stuff.
Interesting. No, that's
what are your thoughts on that, Ferd?
Well, you can certainly do a joint venture sale. It's just a portfolio sale. I mean, you'd have to allocate the purchase price amongst the two. You'd both have to be parties to a contract, or you'd have to agree to, if I was the buyer, for example, you would sign a contract for me, and I would say, look, I'm only going to pay you 50,000 to 60,000 a pad of this, what I consider a premium, if I also have the guy next door in our contract. So it's got a cross termination, cross default. It could either be in one contract with 3 parties, or it could be in 2 contracts with me as the buyer and both parties. Yeah, that's not a problem. There'll be some zoning issues, perhaps some permanent, these run separate permitting. You need separate title commitments.
Got it.
You know, things like that. You might be able to merge them. I mean, I'm trying to think if I have any parks that were two and one. I have more than one parcel, but I mean, like, so for example, if one of you has an easement over the other, one of you is the master, one of you is the servant of that easement, you can abandon the easement if you own both parts, or you could jointly agree to do it. You could modify it. I just did a refinance on it's a 92 pads park I have in Illinois, but I have approvals by the state to add 13 more pads, but I don't have it done yet. And I was putting it on Fannie Mae refinance, the main park, and the rules there, you can't really touch the asset once you got debt on it. And I was like, well, can I just add 13 more pads? Give me a year to get it all done. They're like, no, you can't. Well, I didn't want to delay my refinance. So I separated the expansion parcel as a separate parcel. And then I also had about 45 storage units that I separated as a third parcel, but there was only 2 curb cuts to the main road. So I had to give the main park in the back an access easement over the expansion parcel so that it could access the second curb cut onto the main road. So I had ingress egress. And then for the storage parcel, I had no road access. So I had to give it easements over both the main mobile home park parcel and the expansion mobile home park parcel, so that I could independently sell off the self-storage unit, which is what I intend to do once I fill it. So I'm at like 75% occupancy. When I bought it was 0. So it's kind of been a labor of love filling that storage, but I'm not really in the storage business. So I plan on just fill it up and then sell it for its, you know, terminal value ideally. So you got to just look at the title work, easements, things like that. There could be zoning or permitting issues. But I mean, not looking at it, wouldn't know specifically, but yeah, I mean, that's sort of a creative solution. I mean, that's the thing. If you add value with creative solutions, you can, get paid for it. And then, the other guy too. I mean, your other option would be try to buy that guy out or sell to that guy.
Right.
Because you may have different investment timelines. This guy maybe has no debt on it, just like your Rockford Park, and he wants to hold it for 25 years. Well, he don't want to sell it. Well, then he wants to buy yours, and maybe you don't get the extreme premium, but you get more than you would selling yours to me, for example, is an a la carte deal.
Right. And we know from looking at the public record of the sale, he was 1031 money when he closed in October last year. I closed December last year. So I don't know if he's going to want to do it again, but if he bought for 1.5, if he can sell for, 4, that's pretty tempting. And the reason I see that is that I've looked at the other listings. Timeout Communities owns a 150 pad park 2 miles from us. I'm sorry, Yes Communities. And then Timeout Communities owns like 6 or 7 parks within a few miles of us that are over 100 spaces. So we get into that, or like you said, or I can look to buy him out and get some Fannie Freddie non-recourse debt, because right now it's a small bank full recourse loan, which I'm okay with. There's no density issues, not in a floodplain, et cetera. But if I could buy his park, then I could, get some better debt. So that's
Sure.
kind of what we're looking at there. And I do like the small parks for what it's worth. The park I'm looking at right now that's in the Rockford MSA to add on is another 31 space park. But it's something where, you know, I'm looking to hold it. It's in a good area. You know, and I don't mind the little park. Sometimes you get a better deal, right? When you start
Certainly.
to get to that 50, 80, 100 pad, you know, you're starting to compete with bigger money, you know, and some of these little parks that people aren't looking at can, you know, really be cash cows, you know, especially if you go the route that I don't recommend. But if you go the route, let's say you're in a certain financial position where you pay all cash, and then the cash flow becomes really, really good, you know, especially if you're getting a, you know, a 12, 15 cap, which sometimes you find on these little parks,
Right.
even now.
No,
So it
that's
just kind of
definitely,
depends on your goals. Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely one of the values of smaller parks is they're not as competitive to buy, right? So you can buy them at a higher cap rate for sure, lower price per pad, not as competitive. You know, you got to look at your exit strategy, right? I mean, because you're gonna have the same problem on the exit unless you can cobble them together either as a scattered
Right.
site in one geographic metro or as a total portfolio sale. I mean, so you know, 250 pad parks are probably not worth as much as 100 pad park, but you can probably buy 250 pad parks for 80 cents on the dollar from what you could buy a 100 pad park.
Right.
And it's all, and like everything, right? It's fact specific and geographic location specific. Like I'd rather own 50 pads in Springfield than 100 pads in Carbondale,
Right.
4 hours south. So
Right.
you know, there's a number of factors at play. So, tell me too, Adam, how are you? How what is your workload from a management perspective? I mean, we go to the boot camp, and I've been there, and lots of people have been there, and overall, it's a great program. One critique some people have come out of there is you get the impression you can manage a park on 4 hours a week. Which perhaps your Rockford park you can with good management from afar. Clearly, you're not doing site visits weekly. Other parks, if you're infilling 50 pads, for example, it's infeasible to do it in 4 hours a week.
Yep.
Do you have a day job? How much do you have to spend on time on this? Do you have other partners besides your manager, or is it just you directly supervising the manager on these parks?
Yeah, really, really good question. So on the Rockford Park, I mean, at least initially taking it over, it takes time. You know, that's what people have to understand with park number one. Everything's harder, right? Just going through the 9 training sessions with Brent Manager. I mean, my background is sales, not IT. I can't even believe that I ever did that, right? But it's good to learn it and know it and whatnot. So everything was harder, getting clients on auto pay, but my background is business and sales. I own another business that brings in cash flow that takes 0 hours a week. So I'm in a little bit of a unique position, but I kind of use that background to be like, okay, how can I gradually get all these things off my plate, especially because I have talent, right? My park manager and her husband, they have competence, they have skills, and we have trust. And so I can delegate, right? And so eventually I got everything, setting violations, towing cars, dealing with the snow removal, dealing with a water leak, just anything that even when I need to get a tree trimmed or whatever, my park manager will do that. I kind of have made it where everything that would be my problem now has become her problem, and she has a credit card for the park, and I'm like, hey, if it's under $2,000, take care of it. I don't want to know about it, right? So we're there, right? Now, do you start there? No, that definitely takes some time. So I'd say the Rockford Park takes, you know, 0 hours a week. You know, there might be a week where we have a water leak where I have to spend an hour or two into that, but really I've empowered her because she's talent, and you're not going to get this probably with most park managers, to go out there and figure it out, get quotes, get estimates, negotiate. She knows, you know, how I operate at this point, but that's taken time, right? So at this point, that doesn't take much time. The Springfield Park would be a full-time job right now because we do have some infill to do there, and we have a good amount of park-owned homes that need to be sold, but I'm 51% majority owner on that park. My partner, who you know, Nick Najar, runs that park. So he has parks in that area. And for me, I'm a lifestyle investor. I was going to drop that deal, and I called Nick. I'm like, dude, you know, because he knows that I have the park, I have other real estate in San Diego, and I have another business that brings in cash flow where I'm in a unique position that I don't need to work. I don't have a day job or anything like that. And so I'm always looking for, how do I not put effort into this? And so I called Nick. I said, listen, dude, I know you got like $150,000 or $200,000 assignment fee. I'm like, this is a really good deal, direct to seller. I've worked it. I've already paid Stothy DD. I'm like, dude, I just want my DD money back and a little kicker. You assign it. I don't want to deal with it. Let's do it. And Nick's like, hey man, let's just buy it. I'll do all the work for it. And I'm like, you'll do all the work? And he's like, yeah, and you can have control. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that deal. So it was almost like an offer you couldn't pass up. Plus Nick and I, we go back 15 years. We were in a similar business together. We're good buddies and all the rest of it. So it just made sense to me. I'm always looking at not just what's my return on investment, but what's my return on time, energy, and aggravation being the main one. So to me, I don't want to live a great lifestyle when I'm 60 or 70. I want to live a great lifestyle now. I got a little baby who's 1. I like to surf. I live in San Diego where the weather's always nice. I'm not in this business to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week. Now that might be different on somebody who's syndicating and wants to have 5,000 lots, but those aren't my goals. I know what I need to get by. I know what we need to be financially independent. And sometimes it's diminishing returns where you're getting richer just to get richer. And it's kind of like, why? Who are you competing with, right? Are you competing with others? Are you competing with your own ego? Are you competing with your own perception of where you think you should be? If it's something you love to do, that's different. But to say that I love the mobile home park business, no, I'm passionate about the outcome that it provides for my lifestyle, but I am a do the minimum amount type of person. And that's kind of me. Now, if you're coming into the business with 10 grand to your name and just getting started and you don't have any real estate and any capital, all the rest of it, then you're going to be on a totally different page. But if you're coming into this business and you're already pretty well off and maybe already financially free, then you can play the game a little bit differently where, frankly, on both those parks, I work maybe an hour a week max. And because I set them up that way. But again, that's not going to be realistic for many other people. So again, down in distance, you have to understand where you at as an investor, where you at in your chapter of investing, what are your lifestyle goals, and what can you pay off, what can you pull off here, and that's so my setup is definitely unique.
No, that's interesting. That's definitely unique. That's great. I think my wife wants to hear that episode. Like, yeah, you say don't work 40, 50, 60 hours. She'd be like, I'm fine if you pick any of those numbers. Just don't pick a bigger number. So
sure.
That's funny though. That's great. You can pull that off and done well for yourself and set up a good team. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
What other lessons learned or tips you have for our audience before we break up here?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is due diligence, right? So I am just a huge fan, and Nick's used them for all of his 6 parks, and Justin Donald has, I don't know, 8 or 9 parks, whatever. And for me, both of my parks, the deals I haven't bought, the 3 deals that I, paid almost 40 grand on DD on that I didn't buy, those are more important than the 2 deals I ended up with, right? So again, shout out to Stothy and due diligence partners. If you don't know what the hell you're doing and you have this 500-page due diligence handbook, especially if you're from 2,000 miles away like me, if you have capital, if you're coming into this business even decently well off, that due diligence, they're basically a staff that you don't have to pay for, right? Because they're calling the city, they're doing all this work, and they're doing it at less of a cost than you would have if you hired an employee to do that with payroll, et cetera. So I look at them as almost my staff, but I don't have payroll or any employee liability. So again, because I think that if I had started this journey with a nightmare park, that maybe I wouldn't be here, right? And that can be how that goes, right? If your first park's an absolute nightmare, you lose money out, whatever, maybe you'll stick it out and stay on the journey. But I just think that if you can get an expert to help you with the due diligence versus, I mean, Ferd, I remember, and I was spending valuable time, right? I was already in a place where I had cash flow coming in from another business that offset my expenses, et cetera. When I was calling these other parks to get park comps with a trailer park accent, and I think my wife overheard me do, hey, what are y'all charging for rent, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I calling these other parks for comps with a trailer park accent right now? That seems like a $15 or $20 an hour job that if you have trust and competence, which you do when you hire a professional due diligence team, that can be delegated. Because if you're running due diligence on multiple parks at the same time, hopefully you don't have a day job, because that's going to take up all of your time, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So I think if you want to be under contract on a couple parks at the same time, or if you want to make sure that you don't buy a terrible park, just like we have an attorney, right? Who am I going to go to if I'm going to package this neighboring park with my current Springfield park? I'm going to go to you. You're going to write that contract. You're our attorney, right? You're the guy. So same with due diligence. Like, to do due diligence on your own, if you don't know what you're doing, to me is an absolute terrible decision. And I think that if you use a professional due diligence team, just like you would use a professional real estate attorney, they're worth their weight in gold. If you have any capital whatsoever, that's a good way to allocate it.
That's an interesting view. I definitely can see the value of that. I mean, obviously hiring a third party person, while you don't have a long-term payroll, you have a relatively large short-term payroll. So a lot of people, you can't hire those guys for $1,200, right? And so a lot of people got to get started on, do it myself. I'm a fan of learn it myself, but then as soon as I know it, outsource it, right? Like,
yep.
I'm going to outsource, but delegate. So I've hired a lot of full-time employees. Like, okay, I don't need to do rep manager anymore. I don't even have access to the rep manager anymore. I sit in P, I don't do bank recs. I don't do the same level of P&L review. I still review investor reports, things like that. So, but again, I've learned it first. Then I outsource it. Your approach, I think, is different. Where from a lifestyle perspective, look, I don't even want to learn it because it's going to take me too much brain damage to learn it the way that Stothy does. So hire that guy, and the 6 to 1, half dozen the other, right? There's not necessarily a right answer. It's just what's your vision, what's your goal? Like you said, if you don't want to, you don't need to get to 1,000 pads or 5,000 pads. I mean, I just did a podcast today on 20 pads I've got in Des Moines.
Yep.
It's like
great
pads,
podcast.
20 pads, you can make $500,000 if you do it right. Find it right, do it right. You could have 500 pads and lose your everything, right? So,
and I think that's a question. That's a question most people don't ask too. Like, coming into this is like, that doesn't get talked about sometimes. Like, how rich are you coming into this business? If you're somebody who's pretty well off, you have a business that brings in $300,000-400,000 a year or whatever. Okay, maybe it's a limiting belief that, hey, I need to learn this before I delegate it. That's what I found. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to learn every single thing before I delegate. Even in my other business, I don't know how to do everything. And you know what? I'm never going to learn DD as good as a professional DD team, right? And so I was kind of like, okay, I'm going to learn as much as I can. But at the end of the day, do I have to learn everything first before I delegate it? Or is maybe that a limiting belief? So I questioned that core value and belief in myself. And I came to the conclusion that I would like to learn everything first if it's lifestyle convenient, and then delegate it. But in some situations, I'm just going to delegate it just like I would to a real estate attorney, and I'm not really gonna learn it first. Okay, so because of the time that it takes, sometimes you just have to delegate it right off the bat. And I think that is an important thing to know when you're coming in, because if you do have a day job and you're doing due diligence on 1 or 2 parks or whatever, sometimes that, if you're a salesperson, for example, that's taking money out of your pocket. And so if you look at the 10 or 15 grand that you might pay for that versus your opportunity costs on losing those sales or losing those attorney fees or losing whatever, you might just be better off paying that money. Now you inspect what you expect, right? So I don't have to master due diligence. I now become kind of a trust but verify. I become a professional inspector where I'm inspecting what I expect from the DD team, and I'm looking at it all closely, but I'm not doing it myself.
Right. No, good stuff. I mean, there's a great book called Work Less, Make More, and they're really big on figure out your effective hourly rate and then don't do anything lower than that rate. So not that I'm too good to do my own accounting or too good to stuff my own envelopes, but it would be ineffective use of my time. And as such, I don't get to work on my highest and best skills, and I don't get to produce the maximum optimization and output for my business, whether financially or otherwise. So totally with you on trying to optimize what you're best at and focus on that.
Yeah, and for me, it's all about opportunity costs too, right? So if you're doing all that 500 pages of DD on a park, are you making offers on other parks? Are you looking at other deals? If you have a day job as well, no, that's all you have time for. And now you kind of get tunnel vision on, well, I have to buy this deal because I put all this time in. But if you come into this business with just a little bit of money, then you can get that DD outsourced. Now you can make more offers. You can look at other deals. It gives you walk away power, right? And the ultimate negotiation power is your ability to walk away.
But if you're so caught up in DD on one park, you are losing that walkaway power because you're not looking at other deals, right? So it's opportunity cost on your time, money, energy, and aggravation. Those are some things that I think people don't think about in terms of that. So, yeah.
All right, Adam, great stuff. Hey, where can people catch you, or where can they reach out to you after this?
Yeah, they can text me, call me, voicemail me on my cell phone number. I do live with my cell phone in Do Not Disturb 24/7. I have one favorite in my phone, and that's my wife. So it is impossible to reach me, but if you text me, we can set up a phone call. That's a lifestyle decision I made a long time ago when I got out of the sales business, that I wasn't going to have my phone chiming at me all day. But you can certainly call or text me. My cell phone is 760-310-6714. And yeah, it's a good way to reach me.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ferd. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye, everybody.
You've been listening to the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd and Adam. Ready to learn more? Go to www.themobilehomelawyer.com for free resources and materials to help you succeed. If you love the podcast, go to Apple Podcasts, give us your review, and subscribe today. Thank you for listening. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri nor the Missouri Bar reviews nor approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.